Hello and welcome to StreamGeeks Live. We're live every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. I'm so excited because today, not only am I joined with an awesome group of guests, and as you can see, we've even got a little waiting room there admitting more people to the group. We're going to be talking about going beyond live streaming for houses of worship. And just to kind of set the stage, there's a little bit of a new normal happening. It's a little bit different than what we're used to. A lot of states in the United States and countries around the world are being responsible and staying home during shelter-in-place laws. Now, luckily, many countries and many states around the world are adapting, changing, even opening back up after the COVID-19 pandemic. But as a house of worship, our last show, we talked to Michael Begemen from his church in Austin, Texas. And he helped us realize that this new normal is going to be a process. And even when shelter in place, warnings are and social distancing, it becomes relaxed. It's not going to happen overnight. Folks who are at risk, who might have an underlying condition and need to really stay safe and stay at home, they might not come back to church as quickly as, say, younger, healthier people who aren't as worried about contracting the COVID-19 the virus. In fact, Michael Begemen's here, I believe. Hi, Michael. Good to see you. Julia can unmute you at any time if you want to say hi. And Michael, you remember that Taylor said he was going to join us.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, Michael, do you want to really quickly say anything? You shared us a couple.
Clearly using a virtual webcam.
Avi? I see you there. How's it going, Avi? There we go. Michael, thank you so much for being here. You set the stage for this last week.
I did indeed, and actually today I'm sitting in the stage. I'm here doing some work on the system this morning, and training a couple of people. And the next stage for us is how to incorporate, as you said, both people here in the sanctuary when social distancing measures have been relaxed, as well as remote participants who want to share, because we have part of our culture is highly interactive, a lot of questions, a lot of comments about the sermon and so on. So how can we keep people who are at home for one reason or another still actively engaged as participants in the community when they don't feel comfortable about coming back in here physically?
Well, thank you so much for setting the stage. We talked about the need last week. This week, I hope that Taylor's going to be able to help us with some solutions. There's some technical implementations that are required for merging. Traditionally it was a one-way broadcast for many houses of worship and churches. Some didn't even have, some churches, to be honest, don't even have electricity. Some churches have more technology. So there's a major range between what is available. And many churches had started to live stream over the past 3 to 5 years as Facebook and YouTube became really great outlets for spreading the word of God, staying connected with their communities. And as you mentioned, Michael, you started using Zoom really quickly, and adaptation so key here, I believe. It's necessity becoming the mother of invention here. And you realized that a one-way broadcast wasn't going to be enough, and a two-way communication online using Zoom was really going to help you stay connected during these times.
That's exactly right. We were able to pivot pretty quickly because we already had some two-way communication going on with small groups in the church last year. And we had some classes that we were experimenting with, including remote participants in a broadcast-only way. So kind of in small groups, we were doing the two-way. In large groups, we were doing the one-way. Now we're faced with large group two-way.
And so we talked a little bit about it last week, and Taylor Hutchinson from the Lutheran Church in North Carolina, St. Paul's of Salsbury, said, "Hey, I've got an idea. I think I know how to do this." So if you guys want to stick with me for a minute, I put together a brief little presentation to kind of set the stage, and Taylor has agreed to help us here and show us what he's doing at his church. So, by the way, I just wanted to say happy 4th, everybody. May the 4th be with you. And I wanted to mention that next week we have a new webcam that we've been really excited about launching, this HuddleCam HD Pro. And you can actually enter to win one of these at huddlecamhd.com/win. And we're going to have a launch party next Thursday. It's kind of a great camera for getting started with live streaming and using Zoom conferences and things like that. It plugs right into USB. It's like a really cool, awesome webcam. So you guys can all win that at huddlecamhd.com/win. Oh, and I wanted to mention that if we have time and you guys want to stick around, we can do a live trivia for Star Wars today. And the only reason why I really bring that up is that I do think that hosting live trivia inside of a Zoom conference is a really cool way to engage your audience. And that the trivia questions could obviously be something in your church, something church related, something lesson related, for example. All right. So I wanted to also mention that I wrote a book in 2019, and it's so crazy because this book needs to be updated. I'm not going to lie. This is called Helping Your Church Livestream. It came out in early 2019. And because so many things have changed, this new show, which is called Helping Your Church Livestream 2.0, here in 2020, we're going to be hosting this show every Monday. And the contents of this show, the questions that you guys ask, I am going to be using as an author to update this book, because so much has changed with the use of live streaming and video communications and so many things. This is a great book, and we'll actually mail it to you for free during this pandemic. It's one of the things we want to do to help everyone learn how to do a lot of this stuff. So you can go to ptzoptics.com/book to get that. And I just wanted to mention, many of the things that we're talking about in this show will eventually end up in an updated copy of that book. Now, also, you should know that we have this great Facebook group called Churches That Live Stream, and there's over 6,000 members in there. And it's a great place to ask questions and get answers from folks who are doing the same thing as you may be trying to do. So I mentioned last week's show, Michael joined us. We had a great conversation, and we talked about this new normal, the era of COVID. And Michael actually shared with us that by starting to live stream and starting to host these Zoom sessions, they found out that a lot of their members are more far-flung and a little bit further away. Their distributed church, their 100% distributed church, actually was surprising how many people in their community that was able to connect online. So I show this picture every time just so everyone can know everybody starts somewhere, and it might be an iPhone held up with a roll of toilet paper. It's okay. Everyone's starting somewhere. And what we've found, this is a picture of me and a bunch of my friends meeting on Zoom, that everybody's kind of trying to get this going. And you can create some amazing connections with people from around the world, from your local community and abroad. So we've discussed this a little bit. Public broadcasts on YouTube and Facebook offer you the maximum outreach, but private meetings, and we've been using Zoom and we're using Zoom today, offer you the best collaboration experience and the most control over the experience. And I'm trying to design some interesting things specifically for the needs of churches and pastors with Zoom, and that is developing right now. But in general, there's a difference between public broadcasts and private conferences. And it's good to have a public worship service that can be shared on Facebook very easily. But there's also the need for private congregation meetings and Sunday school teaching and small worship breakout sessions and spiritual sharing meetings, even one-to-one meetings. So the world of private and public needs to be navigated properly. And last week we talked about the need to control Zoom meetings and have a moderator like we have here with Julia today, helping to moderate this Zoom meeting so that we don't have a whole bunch of people talking at the same time, and having a little bit of control over that as you need to when you are in a worship space during a Sunday service, for example. So live streams are great, but on top of that, we've been mixing in video conferencing, and then we've been talking about breakout sessions. We published a video about how to embed a Zoom meeting onto your website, and then continuing the entire conversation forward. I think there's a huge space for Facebook groups and online forums to continue the conversation beyond, especially for houses of worship, because they're really open 24/7. Now, Michael shared with me, and Michael, you're here, so I'd love to actually hear from you. Michael shared with me a few pictures, and he's actually in his house of worship space now, from what he's doing. And I thought it would be good to share, because everyone who's kind of coming along this journey, we're going to be taking pictures and answering questions and really digging into what you guys need. But this is obviously, I can see here that we have Zoom video conferencing. So I'm seeing Zoom over here. And then I'm seeing OBS run on a laptop here.
That's right.
So you have two computers.
Well, we started off with one because all we were doing was broadcasting. So if you look at the computer on the left, we have Zoom running there. We're broadcasting from the PTZ optics camera that is right above me on the wall. And then to the left of the Zoom window, you can see the PTZ optics camera controller that is there. So we have we're using all 9 presets that are there, and it takes relatively little training. I spent an hour and a half last week training somebody on how to just do the broadcast part of this. And they came in on Sunday and they got it 95% right, which is pretty good.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. So, and just, you know, on kind of the back channel, the wiring that we have for our broadcast computer, we are using the PTZ Optics USB camera. We have the audio coming in from the mixer to the back of the camera. So we have synchronized audio and video coming into Zoom. Makes it super easy for us. We don't have to worry about any delay issues. And yeah, exactly. So they're just coming from the camera into that laptop, and then out it goes over the Ethernet via Zoom.
Oh, so the audio mixer goes back up into the camera. I see.
That's it. Yep.
Got it.
Yep. For the sake of history, if nothing else, right, because we've always been doing audio recordings of our services, I decided, well, I'm going to start trying to do video recording of our services as well, just to see where that takes us. The easiest way of doing that was hitting the record button inside of Zoom. However, Zoom does enormous video compression. The video files that we were getting out, the effective resolution was something like 640 by 320. It was very, very compressed, didn't look good. So I went on the hunt for how to do high quality video recording. And my solution to that was to use the Ethernet connection that's in the back of the camera and run a separate wire down to, or Ethernet connection down to a switch. That switch goes into my other laptop where I'm running OBS. So I'm actually grabbing the IP stream, the RTSP stream, in the computer that you see on the right there. So the computer on the left is getting the USB audio and video, and we're using that to transmit out to broadcast via Zoom. The computer on the right, I'm running OBS. I'm bringing in the IP stream that's also synchronized audio and video from the camera, and I'm using that to record. You might ask the question, can you do both of these on the same laptop? And the answer is yeah, but when you have 14 diagonal inches of screen real estate, it's challenging to get the camera controller and Zoom and OBS going there and not hit the wrong button at some point of an hour and a half long service. So this way, I'm able to have one person who is doing the Zoom broadcast and basically just hitting the presets, and I'm over there doing a little bit more technical work with OBS and capturing the stream for the recording. I'm also using this as a business case to our business manager to buy a couple of large widescreen monitors and upgrade our kit.
Well, this makes so much sense. I'm glad you explained that, because I actually, when I was first looking at this, I was kind of wondering, why not just use OBS and use the virtual camera output? But what you're doing makes a lot of sense. And it could be centralized into one computer, I'm sure. But you also get 2 keyboards and mouses here. You get 2 operators easily. So it makes a lot of sense. I wanted to talk about some technical implementation tips. One of the things that you're seeing here is basically what we're doing now, but I wanted to break it down a little bit more. How do we take all of this and allow the pastor to hear the Zoom meeting? And one simple way would be to give like the way I'm doing it now, is to give the pastor an in-ear monitor. So they can just simply hear the output of Zoom and just literally plug that in to their ear so that they can hear the output of Zoom. But today we're actually going to talk about actually using the amplifier and speakers that many churches have in their space to bring the Zoom audio back from the audio mixer. And this is 2-way. So audio from, now you've kind of figured that out already, Michael, as you've mentioned, you're running an audio output from the mixer into, I want to show something before I talk about this, into the computer, and then you're taking an output of the Zoom computer back into the digital audio mixer. But I wanted to make sure everyone understands what is an audio feedback loop, because this is going to be the number one issue that people have with this scenario. And this is where Taylor is going to come in and help us a little bit. He's kind of got this figured out here. But just so everyone understands high level, an audio feedback loop happens when a speaker is bringing the audio from a microphone, or the speakers are bringing the audio back into a microphone. So as we are projecting the audio from the Zoom people, from the people in the Zoom conference into the space, if there's a microphone that's picking it up and also feeds that back into Zoom again, that is an audio loop. And so we want to avoid doing this. And we're going to talk about how to avoid doing this. So that's what an audio loop looks like. It's generally speakers too close to a microphone, and that microphone input is being routed back into the speakers, and it creates a really nasty loop that we want to avoid. So audio systems can get really kind of complicated. There's portable audio systems, permanent audio systems, and Taylor has agreed to show us his audio system today. But just to show kind of what Michael was doing, he is basically plugging in an input into the back of a PTZ Optics camera. There's a line in, an audio input, and that is available out of the USB and the HDMI and the IP output once you plug that in. So high level, this is what you're doing here, Michael. Thank you for sharing this with us. Your mixer has microphones, it's got instruments, maybe it's got an iPod or an MP3 player, and all of that audio is plugged into the PTZ Optics camera and then to a laptop. And that was simple enough, right? That always worked fine.
That's right. That was generation 1 back in March.
So here's how many generations are you going to go through? Because this is interesting when you're moving and adapting this quickly. Just March, here we are in May. I'm guessing this was April at some point when you added that second laptop.
That's when we added the second laptop, and it's also when we put in the switch and started making use of the IP stream.
Yep. So Michael has basically added a network switch, which allows him to do that network camera control. It allows him to operate the camera, receive the camera into that second laptop using OBS, using that RTSP stream option, which we have a lot of good videos on how to do that. And then
there was a second, if I can jump in, there was a second benefit to doing that. And that is the camera control. So you can control the camera using the PTZ Optics controller over the USB stream or over the USB cable. There's a limitation to that, though, that was unpleasant for us. And that is the camera control commands. I guess it's the VISCA commands that go over the USB stream do not allow you to control the speed of the camera going from one preset to another. So again, we began in generation 1 doing camera control using the USB stream, but some people, like me and our pastor, we didn't actually like the result because you'd go from one preset to another and it was zoom. It was a very, very quick visual transmission or transition. We wanted going from one preset to another to be more gradual and more easy on the eyes to see. It turns out that if you use the IP channel into the camera, you can control the speed of movement of the camera going from one preset to another. So that was the thing that was actually the primary motivation for plugging in a blue cable into the back of the camera and saying, oh yeah, I can control the speed of the presets now.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a fine detail. And another reason why a lot of people do that as well is it also opens up, if you have Wi-Fi, the Ethernet, or sorry, the iOS app, which so many people enjoy using, just allowing you to use a smartphone, which is totally wireless, to control the camera as well. I know a lot of my friends use that as well. And then you thought about removing USB entirely because it is possible if you use OBS. OBS does have the ability to have a virtual camera output that can pump into Zoom, but it looks like ultimately you went with a 2 laptop solution, which is working for you now.
It is. I have found when I'm using the virtual camera and I am clicking back and forth between OBS and Zoom that occasionally, about once a day, OBS crashes on me if I am doing this. I don't know why. So you certainly don't want that to happen in the middle of a church service. You don't want to knock off 150 people or 200, whatever the size of your group is. So again, I decided it was the safer, the more conservative route to have USB input and Zoom output on one laptop. That is rock solid. That is completely fail safe. And if I want to start, experimenting, doing some other stuff with OBS, I'll, at least for now, I feel more comfortable doing that on a separate laptop. If OBS crashes, nothing is lost except maybe a recording.
Well, that is a very good point. And there's a couple things I could mention just briefly that you could check out. One is if your computer has a graphics card, you can ask OBS to use it. And you can also, when you run OBS, you can run it in administrator mode by right-clicking it. And if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, that helps. You can tell your Windows computer to, by default, use the NVIDIA graphics card with OBS, which usually makes it more stable. But we might have to save that for another conversation. Then finally, kind of closing the loop here, and this is where Taylor said he would jump in and help us, is that we wanted to bring this. So before, and maybe even right now, the Zoom conference is really just in that laptop. It doesn't, the people that are speaking from the Zoom conference, they don't speak out into the congregation at this point. This is where we're trying to add an audio output from Zoom into the digital audio mixer so that people in the congregation or in the sanctuary can hear a question from someone in Zoom. And so that is what we wanted to talk about today. And now I'd like to turn to Taylor, who has done this successfully and has a few options here. Maybe, Michael, I can leave you with this slide here. This is the thinking. You have a digital audio mixer, which allows you to have multiple outputs.
It's actually a 20-year-old analog Yamaha 24-channel mixer, but it has different. We have a bunch of inputs and a bunch of outputs, and I think every mixer in the world probably has multiple inputs and multiple outputs. And so my simple solution was to take the mostly in our world, all of the inputs end up going to a single output, right? Because we bring in all of our microphones, everything else, and it shows up on the speakers or comes out of the speakers that are behind me. And there was no problem until I started plugging laptop audio in to the speaker system. And there was also the speaker or the mixer's audio going back out to the laptop. That's where we started creating a loop. I actually never experienced feedback, but I started getting that kind of repeating, because words were being fed in not only from somebody who was speaking in Philadelphia, but also from our mixing board here in Austin, going into Zoom. So it was confusing Zoom having slightly time delayed audio streams with the same content. So the solution that we came up with was, well, gosh, we will just remove the laptop as from the mixing bus stream that is going back out to the PTZ Optics camera. So basically, what PTZ Optics camera, which is what's ending up going back out to the world, is hearing is everything except what is coming into us from the laptop. So we're just, we have a bunch of channels coming in, a bunch of channels going out, and we are snipping one cord right there. And as soon as we did that, the echo went away.
So that makes a lot of sense. And essentially, you are using your audio mixer to do what in the industry we call mix minus. You're making a mix and you're minusing the source that could create that echo. And in order to do that, it looks like you'd used a mix bus. Taylor Hutchinson said that he would join us today. Taylor, are you here? Yeah. I'm so glad you're able to join us today to talk about this. Taylor, what are you doing at your church, and are you able to show us?
Yeah, I can show you. That's not a problem. Just kind of quickly, we essentially all we're doing is, as I was kind of thinking through it earlier, I've kind of cheated a little bit, I guess. We have the location where we've actually done this, and that was I'm going to show you. We actually don't stream in this room. We stream in our main sanctuary. Right now, I'm in my contemporary worship space. But essentially what we've done is we have a lot of missionaries, basically, or whatever, that are all around the world, and we have done Skype sessions with them on the screen for contemporary worship people to be able to talk back and forth. And we have basically like a panel or an interview style session with them. And essentially what we've done, and I've got the pieces right here, it's kind of like show and tell, I guess. And I sent some information to you as well about this, Paul, but essentially it's two little adapters. You can get as advanced with this as you want to, but it's two little adapters. One of them is a cable, then you're going literally female XLR to 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. That's coming out of my board, out of my console. And from there, I'm going 3.5 millimeter headphone jack right here to USB. And that goes into my device, whether it be a computer or whatever it may be. And then after you're working with that, it's just a matter of making sure that you go into your settings and select that as your primary audio input device. And so everything that I have going into my console, which I'll show you, if I can hop off this real quick.
Yeah, if you could show us, Taylor, I think it's really going to help us see and put this together. Michael gave us this great diagram to look at, which really helps. But sometimes just seeing the mixer in the space really makes a difference. So Taylor agreed to use his smartphone, actually, to join the meeting, which is a cool little trick. And he can actually join in. Taylor, I'm going to look for you in our Zoom call here, and I'll there you are. Yeah. All right, perfect. Got it.
So we're essentially let me turn this down. Essentially using a Allen & Heath GLD80. It's a good solid base level. This is a digital console. I have an audio console in my other venues across campus. But essentially I have the way that I have it set up, and this is just me. I have, these are all my outputs, all my different channels that I have for whatever. And then I have my, my inputs. My outputs are over here in this layer. And then I actually can pick whichever one I want. But my, I have it labeled as captioning because I use it for an actual, we have a couple individuals who are hard of hearing, and we use a captioning software. That's essentially how I use this. But I have this captioning section right here, and then I can actually go in and select what all I want to be in there. So I can literally, the way that I have it set up, I can go in and I can add, Pastor Laura, Pastor Rhodes, and then their microphones are coming into the board through the back, and then they're going out, and essentially I use them in this laptop right here, and they do like a voice recognition. We've taken that, put it into the computer over here, and then that basically changes our primary audio source from the computer microphone to what's coming into the board here. And the beauty of a digital console is I can pick and choose what I want to be in there. So if I want all of our worship people to be in there, all of our pastors to be in there, I can do that. Or just certain ones, I can do that as well. So I guess it's fair to say that I'm a little bit spoiled because I have the capabilities that not a lot of people have. I'm in a newer facility that allows me to do that. But essentially, the basic idea of all this is about the same. It's seriously just those two adapters. I come out of my console back here, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but in channel 23, the only way I remember that is Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan's native to North Carolina. That's all I got. But then,
Taylor,
then from there,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
First of all, can you hold that camera sideways? Because I think we could see more when you do that. There we go. So would you call that a preset almost, so that you click one of those banks there and it automatically kind of sets everything up for a specific preset of, volume levels?
Yeah, so I can go in and customize this however I want to. So my average Sunday morning would be both pastors. And then, so literally it's a preset, and then I can go and forget it, and I can move on to the next thing that I'm doing. So, and if I want to go in and change it, again, this is the way that I have it set up. It's literally 1-2 taps, and I'm where I need to be. And this, I've found this to be very effective for my volunteers as well. We have about 16 volunteers for sound here. And so kind of keeping them trained and everything that's going on is somewhat difficult. You have to schedule sessions and all that kind of stuff.
Can you show us those buttons a little closer?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So do you have them labeled, or are they just color? I can't see it well enough.
Oh yeah. So I've got everything labeled on my scribble pad here. So I've got like video. Those are my pastor section, a guest pastor section. Then I've got like these are our worship leaders, and then I can go to a different layer. And I've got like iPod. Again, I keep people in several places. This is like all my drum section right here. And these are other instruments and stuff, etc. So we use about 40 channels on average here. If we jump over to this section of the console, these are groupings. So I have a group for just drums right here. A group for my bass, my guitars, my keys, my vocals, and so on.
I see. If anyone has any questions for Taylor while we have him at his digital audio mixing board, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them. So Taylor, question for you. Have you had, when you are bringing like a Zoom conference, like audio from somebody remote back into the sanctuary, have you ever had to mute or lower any of the microphones that are hot in the space?
Are you talking about coming in to, there's that loop you're talking about. I'm going to put that down. Are you talking about coming into the board or coming out of the board?
coming out of the board and then back into Zoom, I wonder sometimes, that's like a tip that I'd have, is that you might want to consider, maybe if you can truly create a preset, maybe you do want to create a, all right, I'm going to put this back in grid mode, get us back here. There we go. Grid mode. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you guys is the question. And if you guys have any other questions, by the way, I apologize. I haven't really been active on social media. Or I've been so into this. Daniel Wright, good to see you. Thanks for being here with us. I do have the Zoom chat open. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask it in the Zoom chat. And I guess I'll just keep going with my presentation here. Taylor shared some really great advice, and we've got Taylor with us if you guys have questions. Essentially, he's able to set up groups and have that digital audio mixer set up such so that he can bring the audio into his digital mixer, bring it back out into the sanctuary. And if there is any feedback, I just have a quick couple tips here. You might have to mute a microphone. And also an important part of all of this is having a Zoom moderator. So Julia is here as our Zoom moderator today. Tess is having a baby any day now. So Tess is not our moderator for the next couple months. And then of course, test. So mute all of the microphones and test to avoid that possible feedback loop. So that's if you have a feedback loop, it's because your speakers are too close to your microphones and causing that loop. So I'm assuming that if you have your microphones placed properly, they're far enough from the speakers anyway, and so it hasn't been an issue for you, Taylor.
Yeah, we essentially the way that we've used this, and even the way that we use it over in our actual space where we're live streaming with cameras and everything, we have. I've got maybe 45 feet of distance between where I am and the stage, and whenever I'm speaking from a live production standpoint, and we don't, just for clarity, and we don't stream via Zoom. We stream through a different software. So I've been thankful for someone who's been very invested in and has the ability to kind of help me kind of get this off the ground. We started streaming about a year and a half ago. Kind of like what Michael was saying, I've got about this much space to fit this much equipment. And so and trying to get everything to where it needs to be, but we've actually been doing the captioning software in the space that I'm in right now for about 5 years. And it's only gotten better, but I've always used the same equipment to get it there. And so it's the same premise, is just basically coming out of that console and going into the actual computer itself. And you can do that with multiple, you can do that with any type of computer that you want. I'm all Apple, as you can probably tell from the shirt. But you can use that however you want. But you're right, making sure that you give yourself enough time to test it. I'm fortunate enough to be on staff where I am, and so I have the ability to actually go through, and my job is to make sure that whenever we go live on Sunday, whether that's in person or whether that's live stream or whatever, is to make sure that we're production ready. And so that's what I do. But please give yourself enough time to test it, to make sure that it's going to work. And then if it doesn't, give yourself a backup option, whatever that may be for you.
So,
Paul, do you mind if I cut in? Because since Taylor's got, Apple expertise, the question in our chat, it does concern audio and using an iPhone. Did you want to read that out?
Yeah, sure. I think it's in the chat.
It's the top chat question from Marley. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So, and I can actually unmute you as well if you would like to kind of ask like what you're specifically experiencing and you need assistance with.
Thanks. And Taylor, as soon as he saw that question, did privately email me, and we're going to talk afterwards. So where we are is my pastor is, we're really good on Zoom. Right now, we're just doing everything on Zoom. She's making some sermon videos and things, and then she's putting it all together for our Sunday service. So we go back and forth between the video that she's created, then the live Zoom. Yesterday we had virtual communion, and we did some breakout groups, and that's all being recorded. So what we're trying to do now is prepare her to go in, not into our sanctuary, because we don't want to open that space up yet, but we're setting her up in one of our rooms, and she's losing her at-home studio because her college daughter's moving back home. So basically she's going to take one of the rooms in our building, and we're going to get a really good green screen set up. She wants a wireless mic to go with her iPhone because she moves around a lot. So I'm trying to get her set up for that like immediately. And then phase 2 within the next month is to be able to get the setup in the sanctuary. We have a soundboard, we have the room. I don't know anything about that. I'm a marketing specialist, so I'm really learning a lot. But anyway, we'll get it set up just like Taylor has. We've got a really great soundboard. We want to incorporate live streaming. We're going to live stream, I think. We've got that figured out. I use Ecclesia 360 for all my web and software and stuff. We're going to pull that in there. And then we want to make sure we have the Zoom component so that we can have, we've got a lot of elderly people. We've grown a lot being just online with COVID. So we want to make sure that we've incorporated Zoom to bring those people in from home, because we believe it's going to be months before our sanctuary is open. And actually our sanctuary it's a little bigger than Michael's, but it's kind of that same thing. So we can put that PTZ 20X camera up, get that mounted. And so I'm basically the one having to kind of pull this together. Our tech guy, he's wonderful. He's a senior in high school, and he's just in a great job, but we don't have a media team, and it's not going to be me because I'm doing all this other stuff, and I'm going to be the moderator, head of our council this next year. So anyway, that's my story. Thanks for listening, guys, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Taylor, and I'm so excited about this group.
Well, we're going to be meeting every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So as you move along and continue to grow in what you can do, this group is going to be available. We also have a Facebook group called Churches That Livestream. We can mail you this Helping Your Church Livestream book. So maybe get one of those, and maybe it's not for you. Maybe it is for the high school student who's helping with the tech team, but we can get them this book. And then my goal, this book is from 2019. So much has changed. My goal is through these meetings every Monday, I'm going to be trying to take the best ideas and then update this book to include some better things that are more relevant today. Book's a year old. That's already needs 2 more chapters at least. But I think that Taylor's going to be a great resource for you as far as getting you that microphone that you need for your iPhone. And, Julia is here as well as our moderator. So maybe you guys can chat a little bit because I know she can answer some questions for you. Where are you located, by the way?
We're in Albuquerque, Church of the Good Shepherd, United Church of Christ in Albuquerque. And, honestly, how I feel, I believe in quality. I'm just so much that way. But if we need to do, pay for some consulting or whatever, I'm happy to do that. We used a company called Action Audio here and video. Back in December, we did a video and a live recording of a beautiful concert that we did for over Advent. But, you know, they with COVID, they've kind of closed down. They're not available. And I need to get this off the ground. So.
Well, I think that the best thing to do right now is to join that Facebook group that we have. It's called Churches That Livestream, and you know, ask questions there. You're gonna be connected with folks like Taylor, maybe even in your local area, who can jump on those Zoom meetings with you and get you that personalized help. And then you should have my email. And what I'm trying to do is take those questions that you might have that apply to everyone and bring them to the show every Monday so that we can all learn together. You know, Michael Begemen here has brought this great idea to this show starting last week. And now everyone can rewatch that, digest what we're talking about. Today we went even further. And I have just a little bit more I'd like to go over, but I am definitely answering questions in this chat. So Julia, anytime there's a pertinent question, please just go ahead and ask me so we can cover them all, okay?
Yeah, there are a couple additional questions in the chat. I don't know if you're able to see them. Okay, great. Also, we have a question from, let me get back to where the group chat is. And it's from Reverend Randy. We currently broadcast Facebook live stream PTZ Optics feed into Zoom. Is it possible to bring in Zoom into the live stream throughout the service, during prayer, or after service with the Q&A?
Yes. So do you want to unmute his microphone so that we can ask his question?
I will do that right now. And Reverend Randy, you're unmuted.
Yes,
Hi,
thank you for taking my question. I mean, the question is pretty much in the discussion forum. So the goal is, obviously, with COVID-19, I'm sure everybody's experiencing it. We are in Missouri, so we will be opening back up with only 10% of our congregants being able to attend. And so what's happening is now we are using Zoom very effectively, and we are using the live stream through PTZ Optics very effectively. But what's happening is after service is over, there is a vibrant, gorgeous conversation going on Zoom that people within the sanctuary can't participate in. And there is a awesome conversation going on in the sanctuary that people on Zoom can't participate in. So I'd like to be able to integrate to where after service, we can allow the Zoom to be part of the stream so that people who are talking online can hear what's going on in service, and people who are in service can hear what's going on online.
Yes. And so that's what we've been, you know, over the past 2 weeks. And I think this is going to become a main central topic to this show that we're hosting every Monday, because everyone seems to be asking the same question. Today, so Monday, we talked about last Monday when Michael Begemen first brought this to our community. We talked about what is it like to have a moderator, you know, a worship leader in the Zoom session. So I feel like that's so important to have a worship leader on your team who, just like Julia is doing, taking questions, asking people to use the raise hand feature, and making sure that everyone's muted so that you're not broadcasting somebody, you know, typing on their computer into the worship service, right? It really needs to be managed properly. So you really need to have a moderator if you're going to go down this route. Number one, get a worship leader on your team. They could be remote or they could be in the worship service. Either way, you know, it's probably better if they're in the sanctuary. That's always best, obviously. And what they do is they go through some of these Zoom meeting controls. And I am going to go ahead and go over these really quickly because they're so important. And I want to do this as kind of like the first thing that we talk about here is what you're going to want to do is kind of capture the Zoom meeting into being able to show it up on a projector or a screen so those folks in the service can see it. And if you're using something like OBS or vMix or Wirecast, those are live streaming softwares a lot of people use to live stream their services. You can do that. This template that we're using right now is an interesting way to do that. So what we're doing right now, if I was the pastor, you know, I would put you front and center, right? The person who's who's kind of leading the conversation front and center, and then put the Zoom room in a grid view the way that we had it here, right? With maybe the chat room, so that now, everyone who's watching can see the pastor full screen, or at least large, and then they can also see all the faces of people who are still at home. So we're going to try to create some better downloadable materials like this. This whole thing on top is a PNG file. I'm going to try to make that better available. But one of the most important things here is you're probably going to want to have a password on your Zoom session. Now, Michael Begemen mentioned that they don't use a password because a lot of people joining Zoom don't have a lot of technical capabilities. So he just wants them to be able to click a link from their website and boom, they're in the Zoom session. But if you do that, you open yourself up to some random person that you don't know that's not a member of your congregation possibly getting in and then sharing their video with something that might not be appropriate, right? So you have to guard against that, and that's what that moderator does. So there's a couple things that you should know about in the Zoom software that you need to enable. One of them is a waiting room. As you know, as you jumped into this session, there was a waiting room. And if you don't know that person, or you're not sure if you want to let them in, that gives your worship leader the ability to not let a person in that is trying to come in and obviously do something inappropriate. The next big thing is the live audience interaction. So what you're talking about is there's a great conversation going on in Zoom. How do we bring that in? Now, one way is to have it so that folks can just speak directly via their audio into the congregation. But another thing to consider possibly is reading comments from Facebook, reading comments from YouTube that are coming in. I can, like right now I'm showing, here's Otis from, Otis is from Texas, actually. So, like you might get a prayer request that you want to mention that's from Facebook or YouTube as well. And we're going to talk more about bringing those comments directly in. And then at the end of this presentation, I actually did want to show a little live trivia because it's kind of an interesting way to engage everyone together. I guess that's all I have for the Zoom privacy. But the other things that you should know, and Michael can jump in and explain this as well, but you want to be able to mute everyone during the service so that they're not speaking into the service out of turn, right? And you also want to restrict people from changing their name, because if they do something bad and then they change their name, it's difficult to track them. And then also restrict them from sharing their screen, because you don't want someone to share their screen. This is supposed to be a shared space. You don't want someone to randomly share their screen and show something inappropriate. So there's some controls that we're going to go over. And I'm really hoping to capsulize all of this into a digestible guide and update this book, Helping Your Church Livestream, over the next 2 to 3 weeks as we have these meetings and uncover the most important things that, modern churches who are using Zoom to communicate. So look forward to that. And if you wouldn't mind, just ask your questions, and we're going to try to, address them all in these meetings every Monday. But we also kind of went over the technical side of allowing people from Zoom to speak into a worship service today by using that audio mixer and connecting it to your computer, taking the audio output of Zoom and plugging it into your digital audio mixer so it goes to the amplifier and the speakers, and then having the microphones in your worship service come back into Zoom so everyone who's distributed, who's online, can hear what you're saying. So that loop is the first part. And then the next part is having that moderator who can really kind of make sure everything in the Zoom meeting happens the way you want it to.
Excellent. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Question. Paul, we do have a couple additional questions if we have time to get to them.
Sure.
We have a question from Reed asking about the best setup for having a combination of live with people, worship team on the stage and other participants in the service joining remotely, which we would then live stream to Facebook and YouTube. vMix has worked great, but He hasn't had a budget to build a full vMix computer yet, so he's looking at options to make that combination work in one stream without a PC capable of all the camera inputs from the on-site service. So simple version, how to best combine that remote and local with solid audio while broadcasting to Facebook. So that was a big question. So I'll unmute Reed so maybe he can take us through that question himself. Let me just make sure I've got him here still in the meeting here. And Reed, you are unmuted.
Hi, Reed.
Hi there. Did that question make sense?
I think I understand what you're saying here, and there's some good news, I would say. One of the good things here is that with Zoom, for example, most of the processing power is done in the cloud. So Zoom is really designed to work on almost any computer. So I think, what Michael showed us from his church in Austin, I don't think that these look like new computers, to be honest with you. And that doesn't mean that, they're not, Michael. I don't want to say that you're using old computers, but, these look like older ThinkPad computers. They don't look like a massive gaming computer. And what he's doing, he's using two of them. I do think that he could probably use one with an external monitor and run OBS on one and Zoom on the other. But yes, vMix is amazing, and it allows you to do a lot of stuff with the social media tools. And I wasn't going to say this, and this is for you, Michael, because Michael was asking me, well, how do we get all these comments up on stage? How do we allow the pastor to see these comments coming in? And I am going to work on a free Windows tool that's going to be able to bring all these comments together, download comments from Zoom, and show them up in the management tool. But I would say that you should be able to run Zoom on almost any computer. Zoom is going to capture, is going to manage up to 300 callers with video and audio. And then your job is to just connect a camera and a microphone into that system. Most churches, does your church have a digital audio mixer?
Yeah, we're running on an X32.
Okay. So, but you don't have any computer at all.
We do have a computer. It's mostly just getting the camera feeds that we have locally into something that we can use that combines with the Zoom meeting or vMix or something like that. When we were doing entirely remotely, vMix was great because everything was all remote, and everyone had their own camera, which would feed in that way. Now that we've got a worship team back in the space, the challenge is combining those two pieces, which have been separate, into one unit.
I see. Yeah. And that's what everyone's talking about now. Like when it was all Zoom, it was fine. But now we're talking about, okay, Zoom plus the cameras and things that we have in the sanctuary. And from an audio perspective, we talked about, what you can do to avoid a feedback loop. How you can connect the audio output of Zoom into your audio mixer so that it can be amplified into the speakers. How you can bring the microphones from your digital, your Behringer X32 back into the computer via USB. The Behringer has a USB output, I believe. So you just plug
audio is actually audio's easy. It's more the camera feeds.
So here's a suggestion for you that's pretty affordable that I'll recommend is this Blackmagic ATEM Mini. It's $299 and it has 4 HDMI inputs. So for that price, it's just incredible. 4 HDMI inputs and a USB output that works with Zoom.
Okay.
So it's $299. I'm guessing most of your cameras have HDMI. If they don't have HDMI, do they have an Ethernet connection?
One of the PTZs does, and then we have 2 other Sonys that are from a older system, but they're SDI only.
Okay, so
they might have a mini HDMI, but I don't necessarily have connections. I might be able to get that in though, if I was looking at something like an ATEM Mini.
That's a great solution. What Michael's doing here with his second laptop is he's just using an IP connection. And as you said, audio is easy. You can run an audio input to one of the PTZ Optics line ins, and then you can take an Ethernet out, directly.
So you might consider bringing your audio into the camera feed and then streaming from that.
Exactly. And that's something that, I feel like we should have talked about more over the years because it's such a great solution. Here's the line input. And then
occurs to me, I've
way,
seen that on the back of our PTZ. I just hadn't even considered it.
So yeah, and then that way you got 3 options there that now includes the audio. So Ethernet right to any laptop that runs OBS, or you know what I mean? And then you've got your USB. Now what Michael was doing is he was plugging USB right into a laptop running Zoom, and then Ethernet running right into the laptop running OBS. Because Zoom, right now especially is very low resolution.
Right.
So even though the USB connection's 1080p, Zoom's just not going to do it. And then we've got that Ethernet. Now, if you have an ATEM Mini, you could also use that HDMI. And then I'll show you this ATEM Mini quickly here. 4 little buttons to switch, a lot of great little other buttons to do things. And then the back here, we've got a webcam out. And then an HDMI out, and then 4 HDMI ins, and it also has a microphone input.
So that webcam out is probably the biggest difference between that and we have an older Blackmagic ATEM, not the Mini, but an older one. And that webcam out is one of the tricky things because the Blackmagic just outputs from itself. It doesn't necessarily like to send it to anything else other than some sort of capture device or a screen or etc.
Yeah, with the older ones, you'll have to pair it with a capture device.
Right.
Okay, well, hopefully that helps. I don't think you need a super massive computer unless you do want to, go crazy with vMix. I mean, that's what we do here, obviously, but it's not necessarily, realistic for every church to do that. Okay. Please go ahead.
For what you were saying for the HDMI out, that's worked really well for me in the past. But if you're coming out of an audio console and it's an analog audio console and you want to take it over to USB, Behringer also makes, I think it's a Behringer UMC 202 HD. You can actually go in through XLR or through TRS, 1/4 inch, whatever, and you have Midas preamps, so it's going to give you a decent quality sound. And you can also, and that comes out to to USB, and you can actually plug that into a computer as well. So that gives you a little bit more control. That's kind of a step up from what I was talking about earlier. But I've used one of those for podcasting and stuff as well. It just gives you a little bit more control. You've got a line and a pad. You can do direct monitoring on it as well. And they are literally full composite for $120.
Okay, cool. I guess the other question I would have is, on the capture card side of things, does anybody know one that isn't back ordered significantly?
That's a good question. Man, that, it's an issue because these capture cards are becoming the solution to a lot of these problems with audio visuals. And I'm not sure if the answer to that question. I apologize.
The Blackmagic, the Decklink Studio 4K, you're looking at a week, I think, $600, but it's got I go through full compass for like everything. They're good to work. They've always been good to work with. And I think it's $595, and it's, the last time I checked it, it's 3 to 5 business days. I haven't needed it for anything, but I do kind of check because I have other friends that have asked me that same question. So.
Great. Okay, Julia, is there anything else left for our Q&A session, or should we? I think we're gonna. Sure, go ahead.
No, there were a couple of questions in the chat, and some they almost were answered amongst themselves. So of course, if we miss something, feel free to email Paul. And the PowerPoint, that was the question, will that be available for download today?
Okay, so what we're going to do with the PowerPoint moving forward, because these are so full of great information, is we're going to post the PowerPoint as a slide share and put it right into the blog. So that's going to hopefully be available today. I'm going to get that up as soon as this meeting's over, and then you can download it right through SlideShare. So just go right to the StreamGeeks blog. Give me about 45 minutes. I think we're going to skip the trivia, even though I really wanted to do May the 4th trivia. I think it was more important to answer questions and stay with you guys for as long as we can. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much, everybody.
I'll put that link in the chat as well.